Hello, nice to meet you. Today I'm going to explain about the result of our research with the title Materials Developments of English Language Learning and Teaching for Deaf Students. In this sessions we have 3 points that I'm going to explain. First is what is a literature study on preliminary research, and then literature study overview, and then literature study for the students' needs. Let's come to the first points. Before coming to the sessions, let me explain a little bit about preliminary research. In preliminary research, we have 3 studies that consist of literature study, field study, and need analysis study. So in this research, we just explore about the literature study. This study aims to examine previous studies and theoretical studies related to English reading skills based on local wisdom assisted by audiovisual for deaf students. This research is a literature study by examining previous studies and theoretical studies. The result of the literature review will be used to identify the English language needs of special senior high school for deaf students as a preliminary study in Pekanbaru. Like I told you just now, there are 2 points that we're going to explore in literature study. First is theoretical studies and previous studies. So actually there are 6 theories that we're going to explore in these sessions. First, theory about the English subject for deaf special high schools, and then the theory teaching material for English subject, and then the theory of English reading skill for deaf special high schools, and then the theory of reading skill based on local wisdom senior high school for deaf, and then theory of English reading skill aided by audiovisual high school for the deaf special high schools, and the last the theory of deaf students at special high school for deafness. Let's come to the first points. Talking about what are the theories related to English subject for the deaf students. In these sessions, there are a lot of theories, but we have a list of theories that relate to our research is like this. Okay, there's conditions of learnings, MI, and then the Peter principles, and then Brunner, and then the Skinner's theories and Maslow's theories, psychosocial development of Erickson's, and then the Bloom theories, Rogers theories, and information processing from Miller. How about the theories teaching materials for English subject for the deaf students? It's almost the same. Talk about the cognitive still, and then theory of learning, of course, and then the multiple intelligences, and then the late sensory theory. This is very important for teaching materials. And then the Maslow theory, the Bloom theory, the Rogers theory, cognitive theory of multimedia learning, and information processing theory. How about the English reading skills for the deaf? Is it needed for the students or not? We try to relate to English reading skill for the deaf. Still relate to theory of learnings, sensory theory, and then Erickson's, talking about Rogers, Gardner's, Skinner, Bloom, Peter principles, and assertive discipline. And then, how about reading skills based on local wisdoms is needed for them. These points support by still cognitive developments, theory of learnings, MI, sensory, behaviorist, Maslow, and the humanist theory. And then how about the media? How about the audiovisuals? Still about the cognitive development, theory of learnings, MI, the sensory theory, multimedia learnings, and information processing theory. And then the last, the deaf students. In this session, we have at the Joint Committee on Infant Hearing. We use these statements. So there are many stages that pass or should be followed by the deaf students. Next, we come on to the previous studies. So in these sessions, there are 4 points that we're going to explore. First is reading on deaf, hard of hearing, audiovisual assisted teaching materials, deaf students, and learning English for deaf students. Actually, there are so many research conducting this topic. When we are talking about the readings, so there are so many research about what are the strategy used by the teacher when they are teaching the deaf students, and then how about the context in language learning for the deaf, and then fundamental part in reading comprehensions, and then early reading interventions is needed or not for deaf or hard hearing students, and then so many factors that influence deaf and hard hearing students in learnings, and then reading assessment. Come on to the next, is talking about the audiovisual assistance. How about the media that the deaf or hard hearing use when they are learning English? Some of the researchers say that the audio or visual instruments are needed for them. Some of the researchers that the research about animations or audio visual is very important in learning language for the deaf students and hard hearing students. And then so many interventions that needed for deaf students or hard hearing students. There are so many levels of the students that should be matched with the learning strategies and teaching material and others. How about the learning English for the deaf students? Many researchers have found that they use collaborative dialects in learnings, and then talking about the sentences or grammar that used by the deaf or hard hearing of students, and then influence of a second language as a target language, and then the participants, how could the sentence or the grammar in using the language, especially for the second language, and then talk about perceptual accuracy. Next, talking about the reading comprehension when they are learning by using first or second language. And in fact, the students with deaf and hard hearing need some of interventions, or we can call that by early interventions, like read some things by the parents when they're still babies or others. And last, we can make some of conclusion that literature study for the students' needs is very important to know what are the students' needs, what are the teachers' needs, what are the schools' needs, especially for teaching materials. So all of the literature study that already explained before, it will give effect to the next steps. Means that when you do the field study or continue the next step, it means that you're going to do the need analysis, and finally you get the product. You have to know first about this. So this is a very important as a basic of your research. So in this case, literature study for the students' needs, especially for materials development of English language learning and teaching for the deaf students, and specifically in reading skills, based on local wisdoms assisted by audio visuals for deaf students, supported by some of the theories and some of the researchers. After analyze the theories, analyze the previous research, we found some gaps in here that become the novelty of our research. So this is the first stage of our research before coming to the next steps. So this is a very important for the next stages. So thank you very much. Nice to meet you. So we're going to discuss if you have any some of suggestions or recommendation for us. Thank you.